presentation skills and tools. Presentation comes to mind when we are thinking of ways to organize and um, coordinate our materials to make them in presentable forms for teaching and for training. You know, many of those our lecture notes, they are prepared in maybe Word documents. So the most commonly used method of presentation is PowerPoint, use of PowerPoint slides. So for this training, we are going to be talking mostly on how to improve upon our PowerPoint slides by doing voiceover over the slides. So the first tip that I have here is when we want to make a presentation, there's need for us to look for a quiet room, and a quiet room with good ambience and enough light. For this particular tool that I'm using, we can see that the video we still have the expression of the face, even as I'm talking, as I'm doing a voiceover on the slide. So to have something like this, you need a quiet room with enough light. Then there's also need for a neutral background. For example, some backgrounds, maybe like black backgrounds, red, some odd colors like that are not supposed to be in the background when we are presenting, especially when it's a formal presentation. Then there is need to stabilize our device so as not to have a scattered and not well coordinated presentation. Then there is also need to do a sound check, so as to ensure that the voiceover that is being done on the screen will be as sharp and as audible as possible. Then there's also need to avoid disturbing background noises. In a place like Nigeria, where you have different distractions, different things that can that can be a noise under a presentation. It's always good to go to a place whereby the background noise will be minimized to the lowest possible way. Then there's need for a good text, a bold text that is legible and large enough, bold enough for clarity, so that people can read through our slides. Then there's also, when we are making presentation like this, it's necessary to use illustrations, examples, and then pictorial representations more often than not. This is essential because there's this saying that a picture speaks 1,000 words. So if you don't want to have a lengthy discussion, a lengthy presentation, there is need for us to bring in use of examples. When we cite examples that the students or our audience can easily relate to, it helps in driving home the message of our presentation the more. Then it's also good not to make the video too long. That's why tips, I will still be talking about tools that can be used for this presentation. And for example, if you are talking about tools like the DU recorder, is though it can record as as it can record a presentation that is up to 30 minutes, but you discover that the megabyte, that is the size of that particular presentation, may be too heavy, for our audience. So it's always good to break our presentations into chunks and sizes that can help in driving home the message concerning a particular thing without necessarily making it too long. Then it's also discovered that sometimes when presentations are too long, you lose your audience in that process, because after some time discover that their attention span, when they exhaust it, they hardly get anything that we are saying. Sorry. Then it's also good, yeah, I've talked about that. We need to make it short. We need to make our presentation, we need to keep it as short as possible. That is, if you have, for example, when we have different themes to talk about, it's always good to talk about a particular theme when we are doing a presentation. You know, if you have several topics, divide it into topics by topics, and for a particular presentation, it's always better to limit that presentation to a particular thing, that is one core message, so that drive home your point and people don't get bored on you as they are presenting. Then we should summarize and organize our presentation. Yeah, when we summarize, that's when we have a detailed yet very short and direct presentation. So the summary tips are actually required when you are making your presentation. You know, that's why in PowerPoint is always advised that we should always have a bullet point whereby we now speak to those points when we are elaborating on our presentation. Then we should use simple languages. Simple language, you should avoid jargons, should avoid using words that would be alien or strange to our audience. Then use visual aids. Visual aids, a picture speaks 1,000 words. So when we're able to conceptualize our presentation in a pictorial, when we use pictorial format to present these things, we discover that the students or the audience gets it better, they understand better than when we use words, when our presentation is full of words. Then we should also allow for feedback for subsequent improvements. That is, you know, when we, for example, there's this saying that practice makes perfect. So when you do your first presentation, it may not be perfect. In fact, most often than not, it will not be perfect. But when we send it out, we can always create a feedback mechanism whereby we get feedback from our audience. So this, when we now make use of this feedback in our subsequent presentations, it makes it better, and it improves the quality of the presentation. Thank you, and I hope we have been able to learn one or two things from this presentation today. Thank you, and God bless.